Hello and welcome to an all-new Perspectives, the weekly edition. I'm Deacon Pedro. Today we continue with our little series on consecrated life, and to offer us a unique perspective, today we're joined by the Most Reverend Richard Moth, Bishop of the Armed Forces of the United Kingdom. Bishop, welcome.
Pedro, it's lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Question I ask everybody off the bat. Did you think growing up that you would be a priest?
The thought of priesthood came to me first when I was about 13. We had a wonderful parish priest in my home parish, and I thought, well, I wonder what it would be like to do what he does.
Right.
And it sort of grew from there. So he was the catalyst, really, for the work of the Holy Spirit, calling me to priesthood. And
Do you find that that's a fairly common vocation story, that you have a priest that's a good model?
Yes, absolutely.
That invites
absolutely.
you?
Yeah. It's example. It's usually the
Example.
example of somebody that is the way the Holy Spirit works to call people to priesthood.
I guess after high school, did you go to university? Did you go into the seminary? What was
I went straight from school into the seminary. So I left school in July and I was in the seminary in August. Yes, yeah.
And this was a diocesan seminary?
It was, yeah. St. John's Seminary in Wonersh, which is 30-odd miles southwest of London.
Okay.
And I was a student and then ordained for the Archdiocese of Southwark.
Okay.
Which covers South London and the county of Kent.
And then now I know that you were a Benedictine oblate for a long time, so how did we go from being a diocesan priest?
It was the other way around, actually.
Okay.
It was when I was a student at the seminary, we heard of a Benedictine community in the north of Scotland called Pluscaden Abbey.
Yes.
And so a few of us, 4 of us in fact, from seminary, went up there after Easter for a little bit of a break.
Right.
And I was very impressed by the community, and so I went back there on my own in the summer, and then felt called to unite myself in some way with the community, so I asked if I could become an oblate, and they said yes, and I've been so ever since, and that I found those roots with the community, Benedictine religious community, a huge support in my priesthood, because you've got that community who are praying for you, a kind of a spiritual home, if you like, and it means a lot to me.
Can you explain, for people who are hearing that word oblate for the first time, you didn't become a Benedictine, like you didn't. So what's can you explain what that means?
Right. Well, you'll find if you look in the Rule of St. Benedict,
yes,
he talks about oblates, who very often in his time would actually be young people, children, who perhaps their parents couldn't look after them any longer, and so the parents would bring them to the monastery. Now, it doesn't mean that any longer, but rather the word oblate comes from oblation, so you offer yourself to the monastery, and in a way the monastery offers themselves to you too, to be your spiritual family. It's not like a third order. You know, the Franciscans have third orders.
Yes.
So just like with Benedictine life, you're attached to the monastery for life, it's exactly the same for an oblate.
Right.
So I'm an oblate of a particular monastery.
I see. And so is that, so you would say that your spirituality is a Benedictine spirituality that informs what you do, but you're not a Benedictine monk.
That's right. So certainly the Rule of St. Benedict, I hope, informs my life.
Yes.
And that union with the community in prayer, and I always go there on retreat every year. In fact, I've given the community their community retreat. They asked me to do that once. It's a huge support, and I think works both ways. It's not just what the monastery does for me. I do hope that I offer something back to the community.
Right. Now you did say, I don't want to imply that it's like a third order, but is this a fairly common thing that a diocesan priest would have an association with a religious community?
Yeah, it is quite common. There are certainly a number of priests who are oblates of Pluscaden. The monastery altogether, I think, has about 250 oblates.
Yes.
And a number of them will be priests. In the same way that you'll find secular priests, diocesan priests, who are Franciscan Third Order or Dominican tertiaries. Right. It's quite common, common.
Now, you're also a canon lawyer, so I think that I'm going to ask this question to you as a canon lawyer, consecrated life, because as a diocesan priest, technically, canonically, you're not consecrated.
That's right.
But you're going to have to explain that to us.
Right. Well, consecration. The way to think about it. The way to think about it is that somebody enters consecrated life, they become a member of a religious order.
Okay.
So Jesuits, Dominicans,
Mm-hmm.
Benedictines, the Basilians that you have here in Canada,
Yes.
the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, whoever it might be. So you
Yes.
join a religious order, and that renders you part of consecrated life. Now,
Right.
people enter consecrated life. Some of them are priests, some of them are not.
Right.
So sisters, brothers are
Mm-hmm.
consecrated.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people in consecrated life will be priests.
Yes.
Those who join a diocese become just diocesan priests, if you like, working under their bishop
Yes.
rather than a religious superior,
Mm-hmm.
Canonically are not consecrated
Mhm.
persons.
Canonically.
Canonically. Now
Yes.
that doesn't take away from, if you like, the consecration that belongs to all of us through our baptism.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which I think for some people is confusing in terms of the meaning. So the clarification is that canonically. And so when the Holy Father says that this is a year for consecrated life, he's very specifically talking about religious,
Yeah.
people who belong to religious
yeah.
communities.
Those who take
or
religious
congregations.
vows. Those who take religious vows.
Now, as an oblate,
Mm.
do you fall under that category or not?
No.
Or
No.
canonically?
Not,
No.
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 So that means, for instance, looking at it very, very practically,
Yes.
if I fall sick,
Mhm.
I can't go to the abbot of my monastery and say, "No, I'm sick, you've got to pay my hospital bills."
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, because you're not a member of that
'Cause
congregation.
No.
Right. Okay.
That's a very nuts and bolts way to put
Yes,
it, but I
yeah.
think it explains how
Yeah,
things
so-
work, if you like.
Yeah, I think I get it. So you're also the bishop of the forces, the armed forces in the United Kingdom. So how did we get from being a diocesan priest to, I guess, being a bishop or to being in the armed forces? Were you an army chaplain? How does that work?
Well, I was a chaplain in the reserve many years ago now, with a reserve hospital for the army, just for 5 years or so. So this post came about after.
The post of being chaplain.
As being bishop.
Okay.
Post of being bishop came to me. I was at that stage the vicar general in my diocese the diocese in Southwark, and I received a phone call from the nuncio.
Yes, the phone
who
call.
said, "Would you come and see me?"
Uh-oh.
And the nuncio said, very simply, "You have been appointed the bishop of the armed forces. Will you accept?"
Okay.
That was that.
Yes.
So I said, "Well, I remember saying to him, I said, well, if this is what the Holy Father wants, it's God's will, and I'll do my best."
Yes.
And here I am.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that, because I mean we talk about vocation, and obviously at 13 you said you had that was put in your heart, and then you entered a journey. So there's a bit of a saying yes there. There's a bit of a saying yes as a seminarian, as you discern. There's saying yes when you met the Benedictines, and then there's the phone call from the nuncio. How different are those? Do you see that part as part of the same journey, or is it three different callings?
Well, certainly in terms of the vocational journey, the call is to diaconate, priesthood, episcopacy. It's the same sacrament of orders,
Yes.
but if you like, at a different depth. My sense of call to be part of a Benedictine community, I think, was a gift from God as something which sustains me and to which I contribute. And if you like, it's a bit of a space out of which I try to live my life. So it's a real gift to me, and runs alongside and underpins everything else I do, I think.
Yeah, no, and it's very different than being a bishop.
Yeah.
With the responsibilities that
Yes,
come with
yeah.
with that. Chaplain, being an army chaplain. Tell me about that.
But the life of our chaplains is quite extraordinary, I think. They bring the gospel into places where people very often shouldn't ever have to be. Thinking of the experience of some of our chaplains in Afghanistan, for instance, some of the things they've had to see are things that nobody should ever see. Chaplains, for instance, working in the hospital in Camp Bastion, where casualties are coming in with limbs gone and all the rest of it. And worse still when children and mothers are brought into the hospital with savage injuries. That's something that nobody should ever see or experience. But there they are, and they're working alongside our armed forces community, bringing Christ into that space. One of my chaplains put it that the role of the chaplain is to bring hope where there isn't any. And that's a very privileged vocation, a very hard vocation. People sometimes say to me, why does the church go to these places? Is it right that the church should be involved in that kind of place? And my response always is, well, wherever people are, so Christ must be, and so the church must go there. That might sound simplistic, but I think it is as simple as that.
Yeah. I want to ask you more about that, but we're going to take a little break. We're speaking with Bishop Richard Moth. He's the Bishop of the Armed Forces of the United Kingdom, and we're speaking about his vocation, his work, and of course, consecrated life. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Perspectives on Consecrated Life. I'm speaking with Bishop Richard Moth of the Armed Forces of the United Kingdom. Perhaps we also need to explain what it means to be a bishop of the Armed Forces. And I guess you haven't been a bishop in a geographical diocese, so because I can't ask you to compare. So what does it mean to be? What are the Armed Forces as a diocese, as an ordinariate?
Right. Well, an ordinariate is the right word. An ordinariate is a portion of the people of God that is defined by its people rather than its territory. Okay. So if you think of the Diocese of Toronto, you've got physical boundaries. So I have none. So wherever the armed forces of the UK are at any one time is my diocese.
Right. So how does that work, or what challenges do you have as a bishop to a people that are not in the same geographical area?
You have to travel a lot. So, we have the armed forces of the UK, obviously in England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, Cyprus, Gibraltar, Afghanistan, the Falkland Islands. So I spend my life traveling. Right. Or quite a bit of it.
And what do you do? I mean...
Well, anything a bishop would do in a territorial diocese. So, for instance, I might visit Germany. There could be confirmations there. Last year I gave a retreat to families in military families in Gibraltar, in Germany. Yeah. I will go there to support my chaplains. Yes. Pretty much the things that a bishop would do in a territorial diocese, but just rather strung out, spread about all over the place.
So the chaplains are the priests of your diocese.
That's right.
When you meet with a chaplain, when you maybe lead a retreat for chaplains, or the kind of support that you give them, I guess that the support they need is maybe different than the support that a priest in a parish
needs. To an extent, but I mean the people that they are looking after, depending on the military requirement, you could have a situation that's actually pretty much like running a parish. Okay. So if you've got an army regiment, for instance, that's been in Germany for several years, you've got married quarters, you've got a school, because the military provides a school. Yeah. You've got the people who go in to do their daily work in the garrison. So it's not that dissimilar to a parish. Right. The operational scene, of course, is very different. So there you will have the families who are at home, and soldiers, sailors, airmen on the front line. For those at sea, obviously it means a chaplain being on board ship with them. Right. For the army, it could be a chaplain in a forward operating base in Afghanistan. With the Royal Air Force, it'll mean a chaplain on a flight line somewhere, looking after people who are going to go and do a very dangerous job. So that's a very different situation. Yeah.
Now, in your travels, have you had the chance to go to Afghanistan or Iraq or places where there is combat?
Yes, the Iraq operation for the British forces finished before I was ordained a bishop, but I have been to Afghanistan, to Camp Bastion on one occasion.
Yes.
Yeah.
How was that?
And it was a fascinating place to be and a privileged place to be, particularly visiting the hospital there, which was a most extraordinary and wonderful hospital. I know, probably one of the best trauma hospitals in the world, with the expertise that was there.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the slightly curious benefits, seems odd to speak of it in this way, but one of the curious benefits of conflict is the ability to deal with traumatic injury. Those skills are developed and then brought back to civilian hospitals.
Interesting.
It's horrible it has to happen that way, but it is a spin-off of combat.
Now, when you as bishop of the armed forces, let's say you travel to Afghanistan or wherever, is there any work that you get to do, or relationship that you would have to have with the local ordinary of that diocese?
No, not in those circumstances. No.
Not at all,
no,
eh?
No.
Interesting.
Not there, no. I mean, in Germany, I've got to know the particularly one of the auxiliary bishops in Paderborn quite well, because we've got a very large garrison there, and he's always been very supportive of our military community. So sometimes, yes, but not in the front
it's
line.
It's not
no,
necessary.
No, and it's the front line isn't somewhere a bishop goes very often, because militarily I'd be rather in the way.
You think so?
I need, yes, absolutely.
You think so? Now, you're also the chair of governors at St. Mary's University in London, which I would think is quite different.
It is.
Than your other work.
Yeah.
Tell us about St. Mary's.
Well, St. Mary's is a Catholic university. It's the largest Catholic university in the UK. We were founded in 1850 by the then Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster as a teacher training college. And then it's grown and grown and grown, and we now offer quite a raft of courses. There's law, we have a business school, we do the humanities there, we've just started a degree in physics, and we do quite a lot of sport. Mo Farah, who won a couple of gold medals at the London Olympics, he's an alumnus of St. Mary's. And 3 Olympic teams used our facilities as pre-Olympic training before the London Olympic Games. So we've got a bit of a place in the UK stage anyway.
Yes.
In the sports world.
Yeah.
So we're a university that's very much a Catholic university. We're very firm and clear on that. Obviously not all our students are Catholic, about 20%. But what we do grows out of that Catholic identity, a commitment to the gospel, and a commitment particularly for us to enable people who might not otherwise get a university education to have access to such.
Yeah, now here in Canada, because of the way the post-secondary education system is organized, and I didn't know it was different in England, you have Catholic colleges that are affiliated with universities, but there's no such thing as a Catholic university. Is it the same in England?
Well, we only became a university in January of 2014.
Okay.
Before that, we were a college.
So it's the same.
We were a university college, but because we came to a certain size and fulfilled the necessary requirements, we could then become a university in our own right.
Yeah. How difficult is it to maintain that Catholic identity in that sort of world of post-secondary, in today's world?
On one level, one might say it's difficult. There are many challenges to faith in modern society. However, I think it's also a fantastic opportunity.
Yes.
And the fact that students wish to come to us who may not be Catholic, they're recognising in St. Mary's something which is special. We're not very big. We're currently 4,500 students. It will grow, I'm sure. But it means we can offer a student experience that is quite familial, a very friendly place. We have a very fine record at St. Mary's on employment for those who graduate from us. And our teacher training offering in particular is probably the best in Southeast England. There are lots of things to attract students to St. Mary's who may not be coming just because it happens to be a Catholic university,
Right.
but they recognise something in the place which is they recognise as valuable, and that thing which is valuable actually grows out of that Catholic ethos. I think that would be the way to describe it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the way it should be. Yeah. You've had such a vast experience as bishop, armed forces, Catholic education, oblate, Benedictine oblate. For a young man who maybe is thinking, I might be called to the priesthood, what would you tell that young man?
Right, well, at one stage I was a vocations director for my old diocese.
I forgot to say yes, canon lawyer and former vocations director.
It was a role I fulfilled for 10 years, and it was a wonderful role to have.
Yeah.
To encourage people to say, pray about it, think about it, to talk it through with them. Many people came to speak to me about it.
Yes.
Not all of them, obviously, either went to seminary or
No.
some of them might have gone into religious life, actually, but some didn't have a vocation in that particular way at all. But they were willing to have the discussion and to pray and discern, and the discernment leads them where one hopes the Lord wants them to be. So somebody comes to me saying, I think I want to be a priest. My response is, well, that's wonderful, because it is. But also to encourage them to reflect, to read, to pray, to go on retreat, and not to rush it. I would often find that I would work, in the days when I was a vocations director, I would probably work with a candidate for 12 months before we thought about them applying for the seminary.
Yes.
And that seemed
Yeah.
to be effective.
Yeah.
So, not to rush your fences, one might say.
Yes.
But to pray about it, take it gently, really be open and listening to what the Lord is asking of you. And as long as you're open to that, then the Lord's will be done in you.
Yes, I guess that's for everyone. When you were 13, first thinking about the priesthood, did you think that you'd be a bishop?
Absolutely not. I didn't.
That wasn't your career path.
No. I didn't even think it the day I received the phone call.
You thought you were in trouble.
No. But nothing had prepared me for that phone call to happen. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
No. So what's next for you?
Oh.
Where's the Lord leading you?
I'll ask the Lord that one.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Bishop, it's been a great pleasure having you here with us today. I mean, I have a ton of canon law questions that I'd love to ask you, but as former vocations director, someone who has an experience with a religious community, with the Benedictines, as an oblate, you've taught us what that word means. You've taught us a little bit of what an ordinariate is, all these canonical terms. And the work that you're doing, I think, is quite unique. So thank you so much today for your perspective on consecrated life and on everything else that you do.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with Bishop Richard Moth. He's the Bishop of the Armed Forces of the United Kingdom. He's also the Chair of Governors at St. Mary's University in London. If you want to find out more about St. Mary's, you can check them out at their website, stmarys.ac.uk. Now, you've heard from him. Now it's time to hear from you. Maybe you're a young man and you're feeling the call to the priesthood. Write to us. Tell us your story. If you're a bishop, write to us. Tell us your story. Write to us through Facebook, facebook.com/saltandlighttv, or via Twitter @saltandlighttv. Thank you for being with us. I'm Deacon Pedro. May God continue to bless you and your home.